In true Calgary Flames fashion, we are back talking about some goaltending controversy over the last 10 years.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Maya Smith of the Ice Garden, who is a Calgary Flames fan, rooted in Calgary, and I thought, what better person to have on the show than someone that's actually, goaltended before. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so much better now that we are recording. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So today we're going to talk all about the last 10 years of Flames goaltending. It's kind of crazy to think that I've been here for 5 years of that. And I just remember how big of a deal it was when Markstrom signed. And we'll dive into all that. But now there's a whole new era and expectation on Dustin Wolf. And I think that that's exciting, but also nerve-wracking. And we'll dive all into that today. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your team every day. This team is so chaotic. I don't want to say dysfunctional, because when I think of dysfunctional, I think of Chicago. But
yeah, we didn't have no, it's not a scandal. It's just poor decision making, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that that's the perfect way to sum it up, because when you look at the last decade of Flames goaltending, you look at some of these names and you don't know where they came from or where they are now. It's not really up until the 2016-2017 season with Brian Elliott and Chad Johnson that I oh yeah, no, not household names, but names.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time. So I personally believe that since Kiprusoff retired in the 2012-2013 season was his last season, that we haven't really ever found somebody that can do what he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel there were a couple years we had Jonas Hiller and Kari Ramo, and they were okay, and those were guys that you had kind of heard of, because Hiller had some good seasons with Anaheim. I think we were really excited when he came. But yeah, as you said, I mean, I was looking at it, and since the 2012-2013 season, there's been 7 different starting goaltenders, and there's been 16 different goalies within that 12-year period that have ever dressed for the Flames. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so if you maybe don't follow hockey, or you're new, you're a casual fan, whatever, that is a lot. Most teams, yes, there will be goaltending changes, but when you have a true stand-in franchise goaltender, the only person you might be changing every 2 to 3 years is going to be your backup. But I feel and the history kind of shows it was just kind of a revolving door, and if you had goalie pads, and on the free agent market, well, guess what? You're a Flame. And that's it's not fine, because it's not a good way to run a hockey team, but it got you Dustin Wolf eventually, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it would have been fine. Obviously we see a few teams who have like a goalie who might not be their starter and he
Mhm.
goes on a run and they win the Stanley Cup with him, or they go like almost all the way and you're like, wow, this was so unexpected, like this is awesome. And like if we'd had 16 goalies who got us to the playoffs every year, that would be one thing. But like that's not what happened. And
Right.
goaltending has been like that big question mark for, I would say, like 12, almost 12 years. Like obviously, Markstrom had a couple of really good seasons, but again, I feel like we're kind of back where we started.
Most definitely, because, when Markstrom signed, he was already like 29 and 30 years old. So
Mhm.
you were getting someone that wasn't young in their hockey career. He had a lot of miles on him. And, he was in Vancouver, and Vancouver was fine and not
Yeah.
good, not great. But he was good enough to kind of be enough for the Flames.
Mhm.
Obviously, he had
Yeah.
that crazy run in 2021-22, and, like, he was a good goalie. Like, yeah, he had a really bad season, but I can't sit here and be like, the Flames never should have signed him."
No, and I think the problem honestly was that he had such a good season that 1 year, and then everything after that was just, like, below par, which in my opinion, like, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, like, when we talk about how you like have a franchise goalie, but I personally don't think that like 2 or 3 seasons is enough of a like to show if
Right.
you're a franchise goaltender or not. And I think if you have a really good season and a really bad season, like you're gonna even out. But if you don't give them enough time to do that, you're never gonna know.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, Markstrom was a good placeholder. And, you know, he held it down. The Flames, they had a good roster. It wasn't like
Mhm.
they were just icing a bunch of random players in hopes of making the playoffs. Like
Yeah.
they had one of the best defensive groups in the NHL. Obviously Kachuk and Gaudreau, and like you had a very good team. It just doesn't always translate on paper to the ice. And Markstrom, it was a two-way street. Like Markstrom bailed them out time and time again. And then the defense did their job and helped Markstrom out. But
Totally.
I'm very hesitant to say that like Markstrom was a saving grace because they made the playoffs once in
Yeah.
his few years. So, like,
I also just I think it really depends on the team that you're playing in front of. Like, I've been a goalie for 17 years or something, and if if you get really used to facing like 60 shots a game, and then you go to a new team where the defense is quite strong and you're facing like 20 to 30 shots a game, like you're going to be a different goaltender than you were at your last team. And I think often we just like don't take that into consideration enough
mhm,
when we are like evaluating how goaltenders are doing. Obviously, they're going to take to it faster because they're NHL caliber goaltenders, but there's still that
right.
difference when you join an entirely new franchise.
Yes, absolutely, and vice versa too. Like, if you're only into or you're so used to facing, 25, 35 shots a night, okay, great. It's kind of just like a lazy night. Like, you don't have to work too hard. But then when that doubles,
Mhm.
okay, I
Yeah.
don't know about you guys, but I don't enjoy doing double the work. I can
No,
build at
exactly.
the baseline, but you want me to do more? You can add that to my contract because I'm not
Yeah.
not gonna do it. But coming up next, we are going to address what makes a franchise goalie, because just because you're drafted by a team and you sign with them and play with them, that doesn't necessarily mean like you're that guy. And we will be right back after this quick break. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you one win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when the month of September ends. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data and matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. I am probably like 100 million of those visits. So like take that into consideration. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. You need to hire, you need Indeed. Thanks everyone for making Locked On Flames part of your day. And Maya, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that we're one day closer to hockey season, which is very exciting. Flames obviously won last night in a preseason game. Like their AHL team iced against several Kraken veterans,
Yeah,
which was
including their starting goaltender, probably.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Dustin Wolf, dare I say,
Played great.
that he played really well, and that's a very good sign. Obviously, it's one preseason game. We cannot put all
No,
of
we're
our,
gonna win the Stanley Cup now because we won the first preseason game.
I mean, you guys heard it here first. Let's start planning the parade. But last year was potentially going to be Dustin Wolf's emergence into the NHL, but then it was like, we're not carrying 3 goaltenders. It's a waste of everyone's time. It doesn't make sense. But then, injuries happen along the way, and then Vladar needs season-ending surgery, so he gets like 17, 18 games of NHL caliber talent. And that a lot of those games were after the Flames traded away they're really good defensemen. So because to me, his size is not like part of this equation. But what makes a franchise goaltender to you?
Well, I think honestly, I think the franchise goalie thing has kind of changed a little bit in the more like modern NHL time. I'm being distracted by the cat. That's why I'm not
so sorry.
Very cute. Because I think we're actually seeing a lot more teams lean towards having 2 goalies who can split the season. When Kiprusoff was the Flames starting goaltender, almost every single season that he was like their for sure starter, he played upwards of 65 games, sometimes 70, 75 games. And I do think that's kind of crazy in this day and age. Also, like, I can't believe he was doing that when he was like old enough to almost be retired. But I do think it's somebody who you can rely on to play a large number of games and to play them well and to be that kind of like save when you need a save. So obviously, yeah, I don't know that any of the goalies that the Flames have this year will play 70 games. I really hope they don't, because I don't think they could. But I definitely think somebody who has that level of like endurance and stamina, and then also somebody that you're, I think, willing to invest in. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that I have seen with like the Flames goaltenders in the last decade is that I don't think that 1 or 2 years is enough time to prove that they're the franchise goaltender. Goalies, especially at this level, like, they take a long time to get to their highest level, which we've seen with Wolf. Like, he's been in the system for so long. And part of that is I don't think the Flames have always given opportunities to the farm team goalies. There are lots of them that I would have loved to have see move up, but instead there's a lot of like dump and find new people. But I don't think you're going to find your franchise goaltender in 1 year. And I think if you're not willing to give them 2 or 3 years, you're not going to find who you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I think of like the Jeremy Swayman situation in Boston.
Yep.
Like, he is a great goaltender. That is an undisputed fact. But he still doesn't have a contract. And, you know, the Bruins kind of invested developing him with Swayman or Allmark, and they, you know, did the back and forth, and traded Allmark with no backup plan. And like, you can't just like assume like, okay, like, I'm giving you this opportunity to be the franchise starting goaltender after going out and doing all this great stuff in free agency. Now you need to put your pen to paper while I don't pay you.
I was saying that to my dad the other day. Like, I can't believe he's not signed. I think it's a huge mistake that he's not signed, and I cannot imagine trading your again, like, I think the Bruins are a perfect example of that team that has two high level goaltenders who were splitting the time.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine trading one of them without signing the other one. Like, that just seems crazy to me. But yeah, like, he's a guy that I think, like, again, I mean, maybe I sound like I'm living in like the good old days of like 2012, but like, again, I don't think, like, I think the Bruins had a franchise goaltender with Rask, and then before that with Thomas and stuff like that. And I think Swayman's the next one, and I can't believe that he's not being paid whatever he wants to be paid.
Right. I would hand him a blank check and say, well, you know what, the salary cap's going up. Whatever you want. Like,
Absolutely.
that's fine. And I think it's so different watching, like, as a homegrown Bruins fan, like, being spoiled with goaltending my entire life, and then watching the Flames goaltending situation. It is polar opposite, but it fascinates me because why hasn't your scouting department done anything about this? Why would you trade away potential, you know, the goalies coming up through the system? Like, what do you see or what don't you see? And is it partially because you can get them cheaper and shorter term for that quick fix on July 1st?
Yeah, and I mean, I like, when we talk about this season, like, I have some thoughts about what I wanted the goaltending to look like, and it's not going to look like that anymore. And I do understand when you like have the kind of like rebuilding level that we're at right now, you if you can trade Jacob Markstrom, he's probably your top piece, and like, I get it. But ultimately, I think over the last decade, it's been a lack of valuing goaltenders, seeing them as like a piece that you have to have in order to have a team, but not building around any particular goaltender. And then you just get stuck with people with hot and cold seasons, or picking up like 2 or 3 goaltenders when you have 2 or 3 goaltenders already and then causing problems that way. Like, it's just not like an investment piece that
Mhm.
they're focused on, I think.
Well, hopefully, now that there is a new general manager in town handling the rebuild and all these transactions, we will see a different course of action with Dustin Wolf and really the pieces that he's already investing in. And we will be right back after this to talk all about the expectations and kind of uh, our ideal situation for Dustin Wolf. And we will be right back. But before we move on here, I want to tell you all about FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So if you are interested in putting some money on futures, maybe Dustin Wolf for the Calder, the Flames for the Stanley Cup, or anything, maybe Mackenzie Weegar for the Norris Trophy, you can do that at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. Oh, Jacob Markstrom, man. I loved watching him. He was so good.
I am sad.
Like, he was so fascinating. Like, I think goalies in general are just some of the most fascinating people on earth because, like, some of them are like, yeah, like, I'm the weirdest person I know. Like, I do these really weird things. Or then you have other goalies that are like, I'm the most normal person I've ever met. And they're not. But I guess the biggest question this off season has, or one of them, I guess, has been how do the Flames integrate Dustin Wolf?
Yeah, and I think there's been a couple of roadblocks thrown in the way of incorporating Dustin Wolf. If you had given me like whatever I wanted to do with goalies going into this season, I wanted to trade Vladar. I think he's a good goaltender, and I don't think he would be happy to play in the AHL necessarily. So I wanted to see him move on to a different team. Hopefully get something back for him, but who knows? And then I wanted to see the tandem of Markstrom and Wolf for the entire season because this might make people mad, but I don't personally think that Dustin Wolf is a like 50 or 60 game caliber
No,
goaltender yet. And he
no.
might be.
Right.
I just don't have like the highest of hopes for him this season. And I really think that having Markstrom as his like mentor almost, they
Yeah.
really could have worked well together and learned from each other. Clearly, though, that's not what's gonna happen. And so then it was kind of like, okay, obviously like Vladar and Wolf, that was gonna be what they wanted to do. And then they signed Cooley. And I think he's great. I also love his rabbit.
Yeah.
I love that his rabbit has an Instagram. But I was just kind of like, oh, okay. So probably like I think he played for the Sharks
Mhm.
AHL team, so that's fine. Except only Wolf can clear waivers or can clear to go to the AHL without going on waivers.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing for me. Is that like probably you could get away with sending Cooley to the AHL and nobody would pick him up, but you can't know that for sure. And it almost
Right.
seems like it's going to be another one of those seasons where it's just like, well, Wolf is the only person who can go for sure play for the Wranglers, so we'll just put him back down there and then play Vladar and Cooley, and then we're just back into the same situation of like not actually doing anything with the talent that we already have.
Yeah. And I think hopefully this, they say that they're, a playoff caliber team, and they say, I get it. You have to say that. You have to believe it. I believe that I'm the greatest worker at my company. You know why? Because it's going to burn down if I'm not there. But that's not true. It's so far from the truth. But like I think they know that they're going to have to take their medicine, because not only did you lose Jacob Markstrom, think of all the other pieces you've lost in the last 18 months, and how post-trade deadline you lost 13 out of 15 games.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No. And I mean, if you had gone in the off season and picked up another starting goalie the level of Jacob Markstrom, I could understand. You're back in that same situation where you like have one goalie who's kind of more likely to play in the AHL, and that's probably Wolf. But at least then you have that like for sure starter. Whereas right now you've got like two, I would say, backup 30 to 25 games a season type of goaltenders who you're gonna have to make your starting goaltenders. Somebody has to do it. So yeah, I feel like they've gotten themselves into a bit of a situation.
Yes, but on the opposite side, at least Dustin Wolf is getting like the work in now, and like he's taking his medicine, and it might not be a fantastic team in front of him, but like who knows, 2-3 years down the line, when he is like fully settled in, and like, okay, this is the guy that's going to play 45 to 50 games a season, there's more than likely going to be a much better team in front of him,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah,
much
for sure.
younger team. And I think that like I would much rather him get this like out of his system, I guess you would say, now, when there isn't a lot at stake.
I totally agree. My only concern is that the longer they keeping him with the Wranglers, I think the more likely he is to think that opportunity is never going to come with this team, and
Right.
I have to go somewhere where they will give me those opportunities. And I hope that's not the case, because I do think that he could be like that next franchise goaltender, but I
Mhm.
still think he needs to learn from somebody else
Yeah.
before he can get to that level. And I don't know that the AHL is the place to do it, because he's clearly the best AHL goaltender. Like, he's proved that. He doesn't need to prove it again.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think if I was him, I would be like, when am I gonna get what you've been promising for however many years?
Yeah. So, hopefully we do see a lot of Dustin Wolf this season, but not a lot to the point where we're concerned. There's a fine line, and I feel like, again, this administration, I don't know what you'd call it, like this era,
Management group? Yeah.
like they are, I feel like Craig Conroy is so like just the opposite of Brad Treliving. He has
Mhm.
a clear vision, and he isn't going to stray too far from it,
Yeah.
because he knows at the end of the day, like, again, this is the medicine you have to take in order to get better. And I appreciate the transparency, and also just like the the lack of emotion he has in making these trades, because like if it were up to me, I'd keep everyone.
Yeah. I'd
And
be a horrible GM.
yes, and I mean, I feel like we did see that with Brad Treliving. Like, I'm sure he's a fantastic human being, but like if you're too emotionally invested, it
Yeah,
the lines start to blur a little bit, and it's
totally.
harder to make those hard decisions. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
No, and I do think Craig Conroy also, and like the coaching staff, they do like actually playing the young guys, unlike
Yeah.
some people that we've had in the past, Daryl. Um, but so maybe this is the season where they say, like, you know what? Let's bring him up and play him as much as we possibly can. If we lose Cooley or Vladar or whoever we decide to send down on
Mhm.
waivers, that's something we're willing to lose and just see what happens. And if he's amazing, that's great. And if he's not, at least he's got a season under his belt. I don't know what's going on in their head, but I definitely think they could be in for another issue like they have before. We shall see.
Well, yeah. Well, hopefully not, because I would like just one thing to go somewhat smooth this season, and I would hope that that's going to be goaltending. No promises there, of course. But yeah, is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up today's show?
I don't think so. I hope I didn't sound too like doom and gloom. It could be a
No.
great season. I just feel like a broken record because I've been watching this happen for so many years. But
And
I'm
I
excited.
mean, patterns are patterns for a reason. They repeat themselves. And I feel like this is another one of those big situations that like will determine Craig Conroy's legacy
Totally.
as the Flames general manager. And I think he's done pretty well so far. I feel like he has had quite the tall task with all those trades and trading Mangiapane 2 weeks before his wedding. Like, I mean, hey, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta do it. But
Yeah, I love Craig. I think he does a great job. So hopefully he knows what's going on with this.
yeah, I have faith in Craig. But Maya, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can everyone find you and your work?
So on X, Maya X Motorsport, I promise I do talk about hockey. I just also talk about race cars. And then I write about women's hockey on the Ice Garden, and we also live tweet all the pro women's games over there. So check it out. And yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited this finally worked out.
Yes, I'm so glad that you could finally make it on and we get to talk about something we're both super passionate about, and that's goaltending. That will do it for us today on this fine Monday afternoon, evening, Locked On Flames episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow with some preseason standouts. And then later this week, I have another guest joining us. So, Maya, thank you so much. And we'll have you back soon.